Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Is it better today?
It's not as bad. It's very minimal.
Okay. I think I was able to figure out what happened was that actually Windows 10 had an update, and that is actually conflicting with the settings for external speakers and um, videos. So I deleted a lot of those things, and I'm actually using an internal, built-in camera and microphone this time. Unfortunately, because of the conflict, the video for last session had no audio at all. So maybe that explains, I mean, that squeaking sound probably explains why that was the case. So I decided not to post it because without the sound, the video was not very meaningful. Uh, I don't know whether I will be able to retrieve the audio of that video in time or not. So anyway, we will find out, and hopefully today's session will be recorded properly and I'll be able to post it. All right, so the session is being recorded right now and hopefully we will get the audio this time. And this is April 12th, Monday, 8 p.m. Zoom session with Dr. I, and we are good to go now. All right, welcome to the class, welcome to this Zoom session, and I will be happy to take any questions from you guys.
Let me pull it up real quick. I did have a question. I think it was on quiz 3.
Okay.
Let me pull it up real quick.
You are also, I have allowed you to share your screen. So you are actually, sorry.
Yeah, I won't be able to. I wasn't able to join this while at home, so I'm just on my phone right now. So I apologize for that.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Okay. So,
It was, I don't remember which number it was, but it was the question regarding the utilization rate for finding a variable cost with the high-low method. The part that I had troubles with was the last, it was like, I think it was part C of maybe question 9. But I just had a little bit of trouble on figuring out how to assess that total cost whenever everything was at 80% utilization, where you're taking the fixed cost plus the B of whatever that the semi-variable and then the variable cost. That last part, cost C, I just kind of had troubles with that. So I didn't know if there was like a simple way you could break that down, or what, especially whenever you're kind of analysis or determining the difference or finding that same price of the high low based off the machine hours. And if I'm making sense.
no,
Am I making sense?
about it. I'm just going to look at it and see what question you are talking about, and I'm going to pull up.
Okay.
To share the screen with you, and that will actually have the questions as well. So let me see. This was from the homework and not the quiz, correct?
It might have been from the homework. I can't, I guess I didn't save it properly. Let me look at the homework real quick.
I will be looking at each homework. I mean, probably will pop up and if you had issues, and I'm sure that other people had issues as well. So I think it probably would be, it would probably be picked up and in our item analysis. Is this the airline question?
I think it was the quiz. Let me pull up the, hang on. Sorry, I'm struggling right now. So it was quiz, looks like 3, chapter 6 and 7.
Okay.
Let me see.
All right, don't worry. I can pull up the whole quiz and we can scroll down and you can actually look at the.
Okay.
So don't worry about it. And you'll be able to identify the question. Okay.
Okay.
I think before I and allowed everybody to enter the room, and I was just talking to Ian and earlier. So I wanted to first um, check with you guys if you are hearing me better today. I was able to finally diagnose what the problem was for my speaker earlier, the screeching sound. Um, uh, the good news is that actually I think I figured out what the reason was. There was an update on Windows 10 a few days ago, and that messed up the setting for um, the camera, external camera and external speaker. I have not been able to resolve that, so I've been just using my internal camera and internal speaker. And my feedback right now from Ian and one more person who is there is that it's screeching is there, but it is minimal, and that you can hear me much better. Is that will that be? Is that the opinion of everybody else also? That it is much better today?
Yeah, you sound a lot better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you do.
Unfortunately, because of the conflict, what happened was that the video for the last class, they had no audio in the video itself. So for some reason there was no video on there was no audio on the video. So I did not post it. Post the video for you guys, and I don't think it can be fixed right now. So so don't bank on that video being posted. I'll be happy to hold another session this week if you have any questions. And also I have already posted some homework problem videos which are already working and good in the homework homework discussion folder. Hopefully today's video will be recorded well, and I'll be able to post it tonight. Okay. All right. Are you able to see the screen which says week 3 quiz chapter 6 and 7?
Yeah, so I figured it out. It was question 9, part C.
Okay. Now when I switch to question, do you see it? Do you see question 1 now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure sometimes you get the original screen, but you don't get the follow-up answer. Is the okay? So question.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's it. Is the Vargas Corporation?
Yes, that's the one. I just had a little bit of struggle. I think it was so I'm looking at the explanation now, and it looks like part of it was just that per hour cost. I wasn't sure if it was 94 or 95 whenever I was doing it, so I messed it up a couple different times. But looking at the explanation, it's starting to make sense.
Okay, all right. So just a quick review. Basically, there has machining capacity are of 217,000 per hour. Utilization capacity is 85%, and it has been as low as 30% and as high as 90%. So in the high-low method, actually, we look at the lowest capacity utilization and the highest capacity utilization. Those are our high-low points. And so we are given the two costs. I mean, the cost, each cost. There are three cost items, A, B, and C, which are given to us at the two extreme points: the lowest utilization and the highest utilization, and that gives us a per hour rate and for the three items. And So I think the missing numbers we can. So how did you work out cost A? Classify each cost as being either variable, fixed, or semi-variable. So the easiest way to do it is that the fixed cost the total amount remains fixed, but the per unit amount will go down because uh, the per unit amount is numerator divided by denominator. Numerator is usually the total cost. The denominator is some cost driver. So in this case, per hour. So numerator is the same, $457,000, but the number of hours is changing over the two calculations. So it will change. The per hour capacity cost for fixed cost will change. But the total cost remains the same, so it is easy to identify that cost A is the fixed cost. The reverse is true for a pure variable cost. Pure variable cost, the numerator and the denominator change in proportion, so the ratio per hour rate or per unit rate remains constant because both numerator and denominator change in the same proportion. Okay, so the numerator doubles, then the denominator doubles as well. So this is how you can easily identify that it is a purely a variable cost. So cost B is a variable cost because we see that per unit cost, which is per hour in this case, is fixed, is constant, and then you can work out what the cost is at different rate. All right, and the semi-variable costs are basically something that um, are somewhere in between. So the total amount varies and the per rate varies. So that gives you the idea, that gives you an indication that it is a semi-variable cost. So cost C turns out to be semi-variable. And you can calculate here the per rate cost. So this is actually a 30% utilization. And then, so the total has a capacity. So 85% is equivalent to this 21,000, sorry, 217,000 is 85% of the capacity. So you can figure out what will be 90% and what will be 30%, and that's how you will basically do it. Sorry, 217,000 is 100% capacity. Sorry, so that's 100% capacity. And so you multiply that by 90% to get the 90% hours. And you multiply that by 30% to get the 30% hours, and then you can plug in the numbers to work out all the rest of the thing is just calculation. Do you want me to go through any other calculation? Ian, you worked out what you got wrong, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. No, you don't need to go into any more detail unless other people want you to. But for me, I got it.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Does anybody have any questions in this one? Okay, so let me ask you this question, that since we are already talking about high-low method, how does high-low method differ from a regression? Apart from the fact that regression is more sophisticated, but what is um, uh, what is the singular feature of high-low method? So one of the things about high-low method, anybody, before I answer it? Okay, the singular feature of high-low method is that you may have 10 or 20 or 100 data points, but what you use to get your answers for high-low are just the two data points out of, no matter how many data points are available, you will use information only from the 2 data points. And which are these 2 data points? One data point has the lowest capacity utilization, and the other data point has the highest capacity utilization in the sample of observations that you have. We ignore everything else because they are not the extreme high-low points. So high-low points, high-low method uses only two two data points from multiple data points that are available. Okay, so it is simple in many ways, but the criticism of this method is that it actually ignores a lot of information that may be useful. Regression method, on the other hand, uses information from every data point that is in the sample. Okay, that's a big difference between the two methods. I do not expect you to solve a regression equation, so I will not give you any problem in the exam that requires you to solve or actually use from the sample to estimate the regression equation. Although that is beyond the scope of this class. But what will be expected is that if I give you the output of a regression estimation, then you should be able to identify two things. Number one, the fixed cost and the variable cost for that in that particular example. So while the technicality of estimating a regression equation is not expected in any of the questions in this exam or for this class, I do expect you to know how to use the results that are given to you for an estimated regression equation. For example, I tell you that we have the scatter plot of input and output, and let's say just one variable case, one input and one output variable, one input, one output case. So we run the regression, and suppose the regression estimation comes out to be y equals 3 plus 5 times x. Okay, so let me write that down. So suppose the regression equation turns out, so you have this and you have these data points in the regression analysis. And what you do is that what you're not required to know, at least for this class, is that how do you estimate the line that passes through the data point. Okay, it is important to know that what regression does is that basically estimates in some optimal manner a line that can pass through this scatter plot. Okay, this is the red line is the outcome of the regression analysis. So what you're given are the data points in the blue, which are your scatter plot, and regression equation passes the line, estimates the line that passes through these data points in a particular manner. It has a particular characteristic. The characteristic in what we call the OLS, or ordinary least square regression. This is actually called OLS regression, from the first letters of each word, ordinary least square, or this is called basically OLS regression. So OLS regression, I'm just diving into technical details, is that what OLS regression does is that it minimizes the deviation of the line from the vertical distance of the points from the line, takes the square of it and then sums up that square, and then it adjusts the line in such a way that the sum of these squares, which represent the deviation of the line from the scatter plot items, is minimized. So it uses a minimization technique. Those of you who have taken the OR class, optimization class, will know that how do you, maximize or minimize a particular objective function. So the objective function here is the square of the distance of the line from each of the data points along the vertical line, along the y-axis. So we are basically, what we are doing is that, let's say, if you look at this vertical distance, so vertical distance, this is error for 1 point. So let's say this is data number 4, and this is data number 5. So vertical distance, so let's say so the difference of 4 square plus difference of 5 square, etc. for all data points. So you sum it up, and then this is your objective function. This is minimized in the OLS regression. Anyway, so that is beyond the. I mean, I'm getting a little bit beyond the what I'm going to ask. But what you need to know is that OLS regression. What is the output? So the output is the estimated equation. Okay, just a reminder what we are doing in regression. We are trying to fit a line, straight line that passes through these scatter points. Clearly, there cannot be a straight line. There cannot be a straight line so that all data points are on that on that line that we have estimated, because it is not feasible. Because there is always an error term in these scatter plots. So we want to find out the line in such a way that the line has the least square error of all the sums of the square errors. So, and then we estimate the equation. So estimating the equation simply means that, how do you specify equation? You specify equation uniquely by specifying its intercept term and its slope. Okay, so estimation equation turns out to be y equals a plus b x. Okay, so I'm going to put the hat on that. So that means that these are the estimated items. So basically we estimate what is the optimal intercept term and what is the optimal slope term. So just to make sure, just to remind to people from their, algebra class, this is the intercept term, and if I were to draw a line, then this is the beta term, the slope term. Okay, so once I tell you for any straight line, if I tell you that this is the intercept and this is the slope, you can uniquely identify that line. And regression does that for you. Regression basically estimates the unique intercept and the slope, okay. So this is the output that will be given to you. So you are a manager. You ask your technical team to run the regression for you, and they come up with this estimate. Now you are the manager. What does it mean to you? In our cost analysis point of view, what do the terms A and B represent?
A is a fixed cost, B is a variable cost.
Very good, excellent. So basically, Y is the total cost. Remember, this is the total cost. Y is actually the total cost. And X is the input quantity. Okay, so Y equals and A plus B simply means, so our total cost is A plus B times X, where X is the input quantity. And X could be 10 or 100 depending on which level you are operating. So A is actually the fixed cost, and B is the unit cost, the variable cost per unit of the input quantity. Okay, so this is what is the sum from the essence of a regression equation. How do we estimate A or B is you need not worry about in this class, and I hope that you learn it somewhere. If you already if you don't already know it, then I hope that you learn it somewhere along your MBA program. But I will assume that you at least know how to interpret the results. Now, I showed the example of a single input. It can also be actually applied to multiple input as well. So you have multiple inputs, and that's called multiple regression. So in that case, you could also have this estimation. So you can have multiple inputs. I've shown it for three different types of input categories. It could be, machine hour, labor hour, direct material, etc. And then you can basically have total cost, and your regression will estimate this equation for you. And again, A is the fixed cost, and suppose X1 is labor hour. This is, let's say, machine hour, and this is the material. So B1 is the rate, cost, variable cost per hour of labor. B2 is the variable cost per hour of machine hour. And B3 is the cost, variable cost per pound of the direct material. So that's one way to look at it. So you can have this in multiple input concept framework as well. All right. Any questions? All right. Are there any questions from chapter 5? Chapter 5 is a very important one. You will have some questions on that. I hope that you saw that chapter 5 is an extension of chapter 3, where instead of using one cost driver, we identify multiple cost drivers, and then we calculate the rate per cost driver and apply it to various products that are produced. From a philosophical point of view, can anybody tell me under what circumstances what we learned in chapter, activity-based costing will give us the same answer as traditional costing? Because you learned that in chapter 5, there were several examples where applying, traditional costing would give us very erroneous answers in different settings. So asking in reverse, under what circumstances the answers would be the same?
Very few input, very few differentiated input costs.
Okay, so so can you give a little bit more? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
There's not a lot of differing cost drivers. If you've only got one cost driver when you analyze it, ABC wouldn't make a whole lot of difference compared to traditional costing.
Okay, I think that is good. That is a good answer. So if basically, so the only thing that matters is material, right? Material is the, let's say, is the only thing that matters. Then, no matter how many products you make, you have the same cost driver, and that is a good allocation of the indirect, of your overhead costs. So you will get fairly accurate allocation, and the answer from traditional costing to activity-based costing will be not very different. Also note that if you're making only single product, then it doesn't make any sense to apply the activity-based costing, because that product has to absorb all the overhead costs. And no matter how you do it, it will be allocated in proportion to the volume of that product. So each particular, batch production that you're doing will allocate the cost proportionately and fairly accurately, and you will actually get the same answer whether you're using activity-based costing. Allocations may vary, but the cost of cost estimate of a particular product, when there is only single product that you're producing in your manufacturing environment, then it will not matter whether you use traditional costing or activity-based costing. So activity-based costing becomes very important when you are making products of different types in the same factory. Okay, so if you look at the examples, you will see that there are products which are different from each other. And then it becomes important that which product is actually utilizing more of the indirect costs than the other. And that's why we have to find that out. Now remember, the direct costs are allocated correctly, and they are, they are fairly accurate. But as you learned in Chapter 5, in modern manufacturing setup, direct costs, which are direct labor and direct material, are becoming a very small portion of the total product cost. So manufacturing overhead costs are becoming larger and larger portion of the total product cost, and that the same manufacturing facility is producing multiple products. So that also leads to activity-based costing being much more important, and allocation of, there are more than one cost drivers that derive your overhead costs, and that is another factor that actually makes activity-based costing much more important. Just a little break from the material here. Just wanted to make an announcement, which is already posted on the website, that in-person exam facility was, I was confirmed to me. We are able to give the exam in person in computer lab. I decided to hold it on a weekend so that people who are working don't have to worry about it. So hopefully many people can come. And 20 seats are available in computer lab 210. The exam will be given in person on Saturday, April 17th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Just show up there. It'll be given on a first come, first served basis. Very few people have showed up in the past whenever I have offered in-person exam. So I don't expect there to be an overrun, but take it, you are responsible for being early. I will admit people as and when they show up. And if there are more than 20 people, then people who can't be accommodated will have to take the exam on up to you. Now, in-person exam is free, and you don't have to bring any laptop or anything, because we have the appropriate equipment in our computer, in the computer lab. The capacity of the lab is usually 40, but because of social distancing, we have to leave one seat vacant between the next person, so the capacity is reduced to 20 people right now.
And in regards to that time frame, the 2 to 4, is that when the exam starts and ends, or can you come in between and then work for the 2 hours in between, or how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so basically the lab is available for a fixed period of time between 2 and 4. So you can arrive a little bit early, because I see that nobody is. We can arrive a little bit early, and then and maybe we have a little bit of time after. But basically, don't come at 4 o'clock and expect me to stay there till 6 o'clock for you to take the exam. Okay, the exam actually.
Fair enough.
So I can stay only for a reasonable time. Beyond that, if you're not there within 10-15 minutes, then I will have to cut short your time, because I have other things to do on Saturday. But when you come there, you can come and you can start the exam as soon as possible. But the first day, I will start the exam at 2 o'clock for the first person. But you can get seated in the room, you can log in and other things. And I will enter the password myself. I'll come to enter the password individually. That will not delay your exam. Your time clock starts from the time I enter the password and you click on start. That's when your clock starts. So your 2-hour clock starts once you are able to access the first question. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Will we be able to have like a scratch piece of paper to do some write notes on while we're taking the exam, or is it gonna? I mean, it's gonna be problems like the homework and quizzes have been, right?
Right. I have posted some sample questions on the exam folder. So I am, yeah, so the conditions for the exams are that you are allowed to use a scratch paper. You are also allowed a formula sheet that you can access from the computer. It's posted on the website. It's posted on the exam folder. You can look at the formula sheet and bring it over. Okay, just make sure that you don't write anything else on it. That's all, because that is not authorized information, and that's a violation of the test condition, exam condition. But you can print your own sheet and the formula sheet which is given. And the reason is that that's the only formula sheet that is allowed is because I want to have a uniform. In fairness to every student, I want to make sure that everybody has access to the same information. And there is no.
We can bring.
You can look at it and.
We can bring a calculator, of course.
Yeah, I think a calculator. I've been having a lot of questions about the calculator, but basically you're allowed to use a BA2 plus or equivalent calculator. I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I have no problem if you use a different calculator or a simple calculator, or even use the calculator available to you on the computer. You can actually have a simple 4-function calculator that you can use. I don't have any issue with that. My concern is that the calculators have become so advanced that there are actually mini computers. You can actually do a lot of storage of information, and you can do a lot of plotting and graphing, and even solving equations, etc. And that gives unfair advantage to students who have those calculators. Now, I will allow that if you have by the way, the calculator that I'm allowing is the official calculator for the MBA program. You need to have a TI BA2 plus calculator, which is the calculator that's allowed for this MBA program. So I don't see any reason why you should not have it, so that I don't have to worry about this issue. You are an MBA student, so now some of you may have got an exception that oh, I have this calculator. Do I still need to buy TI BA2 plus? And whatever the answer you got, I'm okay with that. I don't want you to spend money to get that calculator. If you can borrow it from somebody, that'll be great. If not, just basically identify yourself that you have a calculator that is different than what I have allowed, and that that you will actually then clear the memory and show me that there is no memory or anything in that. I mean, that's extra work, but I think I'm happy to do it. Okay, so I hope that answers your question about the calculator policy.
Some of the homework questions I've been using Excel for, because they've been like pretty elaborate, I guess I would say. Will there be questions like that on the exam? And if so, are we able to use Excel on those?
No, exam questions are not designed for you to require the use of Excel. So you get enough practice of that in homework. So I'm okay with that. So I don't want to give you a lot of number crunching. That requires you to use Excel. So the short answer is no, don't expect those kind of questions in the exam.
Thank you.
How many people plan to take the exam in person? One. Can I
do.
Just, if you're not on the screen, can you just post it in the chat?
I already signed up online.
Okay.
I'm considering it.
Okay, I see two people in person. Yeah, thank you, Ken. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm expecting about, we have about 11 students. How many participants are there right now? I'm just doing a very ad hoc back of this envelope calculation. So I think we should be fine with 20 students. I hope I'm just hoping that I don't have to turn away students for that. So okay. All right. Any other question? I think let me close out our session by solving at least one problem from chapter 5 homework. So let me access that. And unless you have some other question for me. So I'm going to share the screen with you, and I'm going to look at the statistics to see what questions were difficult. Okay, so I think I had not looked at this item analysis, but I'm glad that I talked about regression question, which seems to have the lowest first and the last attempt percentage. So let's start with that, and maybe I'll take this question 598 for Fairchild Inc. as well. So these are the two questions I plan to look at. So let's look at this good example to round up, to basically finish off with what I discussed with you earlier. Can you see the screen? Can everybody see the screen for this particular question? This is problem 6-45.
We can see the list of questions with the first and last and best attempt, but we can't see a single question.
Oh, okay. So I think I may have to change and this. All right. Can you see it now? Can you see
It's
problem
coming up. So
45 now?
yep, now we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad I asked because I changed I go to a different screen, a different web page on my computer. Even though I'm sharing the screen with you earlier, it automatically does not transfer. So just remind me to ask you this. Remind me to make sure that you're seeing what I think you're seeing. Okay. All right. So this person owns a catering company. She offers a standard cocktail party and developed the following cost structure on a per person basis. These are the costs. The food and beverages is $13. Labor at this rate of half hour this is on a per person basis. So if the party is for 10 people, she will charge you, sorry, what happened here? Yeah, so, oh gosh, that's because of all these pop-ups that come up. Okay, so now we have this, total cost per person that she has come up with. Okay, so now she is running, this is her labor hour, and that's what she thinks is a cost driver, and this is the overhead cost. Okay. So this is how she has estimated so far the overhead rate of $13, 15% markup. That is quite certain about estimate prime cost. So by the way, it is a question about prime costs. What are prime costs? Anybody? Tanner, I can't hear you.
Direct labor and material.
Very good. So prime cost is anything excluding the overhead. So that means direct labor and direct material. And these costs, direct labor and direct material, are very easy to measure correctly. You know how many pounds of steel goes into making a particular product. You have timesheets, and you can work out how many hours of labor go into produce so many units of a particular product. So those are fairly accurately measured. Unfortunately, as we learned in chapter 5, prime costs are now becoming a smaller and smaller portion of the total cost of the product. Overhead is becoming larger and larger proportion of the overhead costs. So that is basically the reason why we have to worry about allocation of overheads more accurately. So cost driver is a direct labor hour. So she estimates that basically total direct labor hour and total overhead expenses are highly correlated. So she uses that as the basis. So now she does the data she has collected. She actually ran the regression, and she found out that intercept is 48,000 and coefficient is 3. So what is the interpretation of this? So we need to calculate the variable cost per person. Okay. So note that this is the regression. This is the regression running this data. So think of these as a 12 scatter plot consisting of these 12 monthly data points. On y-axis you have overhead expense, on x-axis you have labor hours, and then you do that, you have 12 scatter points. You run your regression through that, and you come up with this estimate. So let us first interpret what does it mean. What does it mean that intercept is 48,000 and the coefficient is 3? Go back to what was the dependent variable. Remember, y is the dependent variable. So what we are finding here, that our dependent variable is total overhead expenses. Okay. And what is the x-axis, that is the regression, x variables, or whether x in a single variable regression or x1, x2, x3, etc. in multiple regression multiple regression are called the explanatory variables. So they are called explanatory variables because they explain the dependent variable y through some relationship that we are trying to estimate through regression equation. This is an example of a single explanatory variable because only one input is considered. So it is easy to see because one input example is a two-dimensional graph. So it is easy to visualize. If you have multiple input, multiple regression, then we have to imagine a multi-dimensional graph, which is not so easy for people to visualize. So we don't draw it, but single variable example is at least good for understanding the foundational concepts of regression. So the dependent variable here is the overhead expenses, which is the y variable, which is what we are trying to explain. And the explanatory variable is the x variable, which in this case is labor hours, which is basically what we believe explains the overhead expenses. Remember, she said that overhead expenses are highly correlated with labor hours, so she had been using labor hour as the cost driver. What this problem is trying to say is that overheads have some fixed component and some variable component which vary with the labor hours. So she is right in her intuition that labor hours drive the overhead expense, but there is a fixed component to overhead expenses as well. Okay? And that's what we captured through this regression. So what we find out here is that our overhead expenses, there are $48,000 of it are fixed. And the rest of the overhead expenses vary at the rate of $3 per labor hour. Okay? $3 per labor hour is our variable overhead rate. So now let us see, she's asked to calculate the cost. So in this case, what she's doing is that she is calculating the variable cost per person. So see where are the calculations given here. So so food and beverage would be, this is $13. This is direct material, okay, and the labor is half hour per person, and the rate for her labor cost is $11 per hour, and for each person she incurs half hour of labor cost, so that's $5.50. And now variable overhead cost. Variable overhead cost is incurred at the rate of $3 per labor hour. How many labor hours we have per person? Half labor hour. So the variable overhead cost will be on per person basis 0.5 hours, because that's the labor hour we are using, times the rate per hour per labor hour, which is $3 per labor hour for the variable overhead cost. So that's $1.50, and that's how you get the answer of $20 and $20 is the variable cost per person. Now, what happened to the remaining $48,000? In the first part, we actually don't do anything with that. We only look at the variable component. So we get the pure variable cost per person. So to summarize, $13 for beverages, $5.50 for labor, and $1.50 for variable overhead part. In the full absorption cost, what we do is that we actually absorb the remaining the fixed component of the overhead cost on some basis, and the basis usually is the cost driver. So here the labor hour is used. So basically we have so $48,000 is per month, That was the monthly regression. So remember, those were monthly costs. So that was monthly result of $48,000 was the monthly fixed overhead cost. And so our annual fixed overhead cost is $576,000. This could be rent or property taxes or salary of some manager or some supervisor that she has to hire, etc., etc. That adds up to $48,000 per month, and that remains fixed whether she has one cocktail party or 100 cocktail parties or 0 cocktail parties. So that is the fixed portion of the overhead cost, and so you calculate that on an annual for the whole year is 576. The total labor hour for the year, and you divide that to get the fixed overhead and allocate it on per labor hour basis. Okay.
How are we supposed to know that the fixed overhead's on a half-hour basis as well?
Remember, the cost driver we are using is the labor hour.
Yeah.
For each person, how much labor hour we spend. Remember that the direct labor hour direct labor hour is the cost driver in this example. So labor hour, we are basically spending only half labor hour per person, right?
Right. So just by virtue of spending a half hour on the labor, we assume that for the fixed costs.
Correct. What we are doing here, okay, so look at it this way. Our direct labor per person of guests served is 30 minutes. Okay? That's our direct labor cost. That's our prime cost. We have already done that. Now we find out that we have this overhead cost that we have to allocate, right? And our cost driver is direct labor. So for each person, whatever is the quantity of direct labor that we use, that will be multiplied by the rate. Okay? So the variable rate is $3. So we multiply that by 30 minutes. So we get $1.50 of overhead cost. We calculated the fixed overhead rate because we divided the total overhead cost by the total labor hours worked during the year. So we came up with an hourly rate for overhead on a per direct labor hour basis. Now for each person, each guest, we are using only 30 minutes of direct labor. So the fixed overhead will also be multiplied by half of that.
There's no situation where the labor, the fixed overhead, or the variable overhead would be at any other rate. They would all have to match at the same amount, which is a half hour, right?
Yeah, so I think the key thing to note here is that we are looking at the cost driver. Once we determine, we made an assumption, and I'm sure she has a basis, and it actually is borne out by the regression analysis as well, that the total overheads are driven by labor hours. They have two components. One is the fixed component that is not dependent on the labor hour, and the second component is dependent on labor hour, which is the variable component. The variable component was $3 per labor hour. So each guest consumes only 30 minutes of direct labor. So variable overhead is half of $3, which is $1.50. The rest is actually just a way to actually absorb the full cost. That's why hence the name full absorption cost method. Is that basically what do you do with the fixed cost that you could not actually clearly correlate to direct labor? It is the intercept term, but it has to be allocated somewhere in the full absorption method, not in the other method. And there are pros and cons of using the full absorption method, but here just we are discussing how we do it rather than its merits or demerits. But here we calculated that we had to allocate this, so look at it this way, Grammy, that $576,000 of overhead cost has been unaccounted for yet.
I think it makes sense to me. I mean, I guess I'm thinking of if the question was, I mean, if what we were solving for was variable cost per person per hour, then we would be looking at each hour. But it's per person, which is a half hour. So I think I understand now.
No.
I think I was just getting wrapped around the axle.
No, I think that's a great question. What you clarified was that what we need to focus on is the cost driver. What is the cost driver? Once you determine the cost driver and what cost you are calculating, you will get the right answer. You know, you have to think through these problems and visualize before you solve them correctly. It shouldn't be simple, you know, you just pick up a calculator and start multiplying numbers. Those numbers, you know, the calculation part, by and large, is not very complicated. But why you multiply A versus A and B and X and Y, and what do you get as the output and what does it mean, is the more important thing for this class. Okay, any other questions on this? I think the final question, let's just have a discussion about for cocktail party. Remember, I think this question is a segue to chapter 7, where we will be looking at, you know, cost variable, you know, cost volume profit analysis. So it's and that's why I like this particular textbook, is that, you know, the questions in one chapter actually are asked in such a way that they are actually segued to the next topic that I want to cover. So here, and you don't, this is more for chapter 7 purpose, but here I want you to think about it, that what is the minimum bid she should make when she's bidding on some cocktail party? Is it $20? So we come up with two core cost estimates, variable cost, you know, the pure variable cost is $20 per person, and $24.67 is the cost, including the fully absorbed cost, which includes all the overheads as well. So I have a series of questions for the class. Suppose the bid is very competitive, that she knows that there are a lot of people who are competing for the same business, so she has to even work on very thin margins, if at all. So should she bid? Should she bid for a cocktail party at $19 per person? The answer is no, because her variable cost for each person, the pure variable cost without absorption, is $20. So if she bids below that, she's losing $1 for every person that she bids on. Correct? So she's better off not bidding at all. Because if she bids, her net, you know, she will be incurring a loss in each, for each person that she bids, at the rate of $1 per person. So if she bids for $100, so 100% cocktail party, she will be incurring a loss of $100, $1 per person, because her variable cost itself, it will cost us, her variable cost will be $2,000, 20 times 100, so it's $2,000, and what she will be paid will be only $1,900. So she actually will be incurring a loss. So she's better off not taking the project, or not bidding for the cocktail party. What should you bid? $21. Should you accept a cocktail party for, let's say, 100 people or 1,000 people at $21?
It's better than $20.
It's better than $20, but it's not as much as $24.67, which is a full absorption cost.
If her schedule can handle it, it would reduce the absorption cost, wouldn't it?
Okay, so what does it mean, Tanner?
So if you've got more volume, that reduces your fixed costs dispersed over the cost driver, correct?
Right, but you know, I think you have the right answer, I think, but your explanation is
I just, yeah, conveying the thought process. This is escaping me right now.
So I want to help you with your thought process. You are on the right track, but just you need maybe a little bit of nudge here and there to get on the right track. The way you look at it is this way. Suppose I don't take the project. I don't have any variable cost. I don't have any revenue, but I still have my fixed cost. What is my fixed cost? $576,000. Nothing has happened to reduce that, right? Because I remember, if I have 0 cocktail parties, I still incur $576,000 per year in that fixed cost. That is not increased or decreased because I have more or less cocktail parties. Okay, so that is one thought that I want you to think about. Now, suppose I take up a project where I had $19 bid, where I'm incurring $20 cost, and let's say we had 1,000 people. So I actually have added another $1,000 to my loss because it cost me $20,000 to serve the party, but I got revenue of only 19,000. So I'm incurring a loss. But think about it, what happens if the price, the revenue price that I can charge is $21? It is not the full absorption cost, but my variable cost is only $20. So what happens? My revenue is $21,000. What I incurred was $20,000. So I have $1,000 that I can apply towards reducing my fixed cost. What is my net loss now? It is $576,000 minus $1,000 profit the gross profit that I made from this cocktail party. So I'm better off accepting at $21,000. Sorry, $21 per person. Now, if it is fixed, if I can charge more than the full absorption cost, then obviously I should accept it. So there is no ambiguity about accepting the order that way. But in between, as long as I'm above the pure variable cost, I should still accept the offer because I'm better off. I'm not as better off as much as I would like, but I'm still better off. In fact, another way to look at it is that I'm worse off if I don't accept the project. Because if I actually, suppose that's the only project I get during the year, okay? What is my loss for what is my net loss for the year? If I don't accept this project, then I have a loss of $576,000 because that is my fixed cost for the year. And I got nothing, no projects. So basically my loss remains $576,000. But if I accept this project, I have $1,000 margin that I can contribute to reduce this cost. So my loss will be $1,000 less than this. So I'm better off taking this project rather than not taking it. Okay, then I hope that helps your thinking. I think you're trying to say the same thing, that it will reduce the absorption cost, but this is actually how you may want to think about how the process works. And this difference between revenue and pure variable cost is called contribution margin. As long as you have contribution margin that is positive, that means revenue is greater than your variable total revenue is greater than your total variable cost, you're better off doing that project because it has positive contribution margin, and positive contribution margin goes to recover your fixed cost. Okay, so I think we'll leave it at that. you will actually focus on this particular concept much more after the exam in the next chapter, and that's when we will also take up a problem on how do we deal with, or how we apply this, what we are learning to COVID-related situation for various businesses. Okay, so I have a PowerPoint presentation that is there for the next week that I would like you to look at. But this basically is where we are coming from. Okay, any questions before we leave this one?
Not from me.
Okay, all right. Let's see. Do you guys want to stay a little bit longer? Do you want me to go for this particular problem on chapter from chapter 5? Do you see this thing now, or do you see the item list? Do you see problem 5-98?
We see the list of problems, not the individual problem.
You have to stop share and then go back. Okay. Do you see it now?
Yes.
So this is a typical example for applying activity-based costing. So it manufactures two products, regular and deluxe. Remember, I mentioned earlier to you that activity-based costing is much more relevant when we have, is actually relevant when you have more than one product, because if there's only one product, then activity-based costing and traditional costing will give you the same answer for the product. End result will be the same, process may be different, complicated, but the end result, which is the cost per unit of the product, the single product, will be the same regardless of whether you use the traditional method or the activity-based costing method. So here in this example, there are two products, and in fact, you will see that when you think about what I said earlier, you will find that all the examples, all the problems in chapter 5 have more than one product. And when you have more than one product, then activity-based costing is almost always necessary. So if you're working in a company and you have multiple products, then I'm sure that you're already using activity-based costing. Okay, so let's say you're given the data about the volume, direct material cost, and direct labor cost, and number of units produced. So now, what is the next step? The total overheads are known. Let's say total overheads are $2,672,500. But in activity-based costing, we identify our cost pools and cost drivers. So basically, they're divided into three major activities. So the pools are basically order processing, machine processing, and product inspection. Now here you can see that when the overheads are incurred in three different categories, and they are not at the same rate, which is another reason is that if we, I think Tanner or Remy pointed out that, or Ian, somebody else pointed out that if the cost rates are the same, the activity-based costing and traditional costing will give us the same answer. And that is correct. It's only when the pool activities are incurred at different rates for different products. For example, regular product requires very little inspection. Requires very little machine processing, but the deluxe product requires more inspection and more processing. Now we are talking about the need for activity-based costing, because if we use a single cost driver, like the example that I gave you about last time about going to a restaurant and splitting a bill, if everybody ate the same food, then dividing by per head basis is the simplest and easiest way to allocate cost. If somebody had alcoholic drinks and other person did not have alcoholic drinks, now it makes sense, because now the cost drivers, which is the alcoholic beverages, are being consumed at different rates. One person is consuming 2 drinks per person, other person is consuming 0 drinks, or third person is consuming 1 person, then I think it makes sense to derive the bill separately. Food bill maybe can be divided, everybody had the same food, so can be divided on a per head basis, but the alcoholic beverage drink should be divided on number of drinks basis, because that is a more appropriate allocation of cost. Okay, so same thing, that's what we are doing here. Now, if everybody drank 2 alcoholic beverages, or 0 alcoholic beverages, or 1 alcoholic beverages, but that is, if every person consumed at the same rate, then also a single cost driver per head basis will be the same. It will give you the same answer, right? You don't have to divide your bill by who had alcoholic beverages versus who did not, because everybody consumed the same amount of alcoholic beverages. So that's how basically, when you think about that simple example of going out in a group to eat outside and how do you want to divvy up the bill, then you will start thinking about activity-based costing. Okay? So again, if the machine processing and the product inspection and order processing are in the same proportion for deluxe and regular products, then even though we have 2 products, the costing will be the same for ABC versus standard costing. Now, only when they are being consumed at different rates, as in this example, that we actually identify the need for using activity-based costing. And this is what we're going to see in this example. So compute the pool rates. So first thing that you do in activity-based costing is that you allocate your overhead cost into different pools, activity pools. So the activity pools here are order processing, machine processing, and product inspection. So you have divided your total overhead into these three categories. They should add up to this number 262,500. Okay, and in real life, it should add up for 90% of the total overhead cost. And the smaller the overhead cost, then it doesn't matter whether they're allocated accurately or not. So at least if significant portion of the overhead cost can be divided into pools, that's what you should work on. Okay, so now what we do is that next thing we do is that what are the cost drivers for each pool? Each cost pool has its own associated cost driver. So for example, for order processing, it is number of orders, and for machine processing is the machine hours worked, and for inspection, it is inspection hours incurred for each inspection. So now we actually look at the total amount of cost drivers for each pool. So we have 170 orders for regular and 330 for deluxe. So that is 500 orders processed. Likewise for machine hours, total 443,000 machine hours were expensed or used for deluxe and regular. And then inspection hours were total 16,000 for regular plus deluxe. Okay, so you divide these total quantities of cost drivers into the cost pool dollar amount, you get the pool rate. So 515 is basically arrived at. Order processing is basically, you look at this number 257,500 divided by 500, so that gives you 515. So here it is. That gives you $515 per order processing. So now we can actually allocate. Now it's just like we calculated that people had non-alcoholic beverages. So there were 10 non-alcoholic beverages that cost like $40. So non-alcoholic beverages are allocated at the rate of $4 per drink. Alcoholic beverages, there were 20 alcoholic beverages, and the total cost was, let's say, $200. So they are allocated at 200 divided by 20 drinks, so that is $10 per drink. So now we can allocate what is the cost incurred by each person. We count the number of alcoholic drinks, multiply that by 10, and count the number of non-alcoholic drinks and multiply that by 4. So we have the drink portion of the bill for individual person. And that's exactly what we are doing here. I mean, order processing could be alcoholic beverages, and machine processing could be non-alcoholic beverages. That's basically how we will calculate here. So how did you calculate that rate? Machine processing total cost is this much, and divide that by 43. This is the 43,000 coming from. You see that, and this is the number. So that gives us the $45 rate. And then product inspection similarly gives us the rate of $30 per inspection. So what we have done in part A is that we have calculated the pool rate. Order processing is $515 per order processed. Machine processing rate is $45 per machine hour. And product inspection cost is $30 per inspection hour. Now, just like how do we want to divvy up the bill? That the food bill will be divided by, let's say the food portion is $15 per or $20 per person. Everybody had the same amount of food, so $15 or $20 per person. And then what we will do is that how many drinks somebody took, how many alcoholic drinks somebody took, how many non-alcoholic drinks somebody took, and then we have the bill for that individual person. Okay, so here let's look at, we assume the use of activity-based costing, compute the unit manufacturing cost of regular and deluxe. So now let us calculate the cost for regular. Okay, so regular uses how much? Direct machine cost is, direct material cost is $43 per hour. direct labor is 4 hours. So let's see. For regular, we actually had 170 orders processed. Okay, so order processing cost is $515 per order. So we multiply that. So 170 times 515 is 87,550 for regular. I'll just do it for regular. You can do it for deluxe. In the interest of time, I will let you work out the deluxe, but I will just do this particular column to explain. Same thing applies for deluxe. You pick up the numbers for deluxe and multiply that by the pool rate. Okay. Machine hours for regular, we had machine hours worked were 17,500. So that is straightforward. So machine processing 17,500. Now the pool rate for allocating the overhead was $45 per machine hour. So you multiply it by 45, and that is your other number. Okay, now you have the inspection cost. So how much inspection did we have for regular? 7,000 inspection hours. The rate is $30 per inspection hour. So 30 multiplied by 70,000 gives you this number. Okay, so this is the total cost that we incurred for order processing, machine processing, and product inspection based on activity-based costing. We added up together for regular. This is the total amount. And how many units we produced of regular? 1,500. So this is the amount, the cost that we incurred. This is actually the overhead that we incurred for producing these many units. Okay. So the cost per unit turns out to be $723.23 per unit of regular. And we do the same calculations, it is actually $226.78 for deluxe. Okay. Now, this is only the overhead cost. We still have to add the direct labor and direct material. Remember this number, part B, what did we solve? Allocation of the overhead cost to regular and deluxe. We still have to calculate the prime costs, which are here. So $43 of direct material, which is given to you at the very top. Remember this? So this data is entered to arrive at the total cost. Part B was only total overhead cost. To the overhead cost, we add the prime cost to arrive at the total cost for the product. So $43 for direct material, the prime cost, and $120, part of the prime cost, and $120 for labor means that our total cost is for producing regular is $886, and for deluxe it is $493. This is using activity-based costing. If we had used a single cost driver, which the company was using earlier, direct labor hours. So in that case, what we would do, we take the total overhead, and we have only one cost driver in the traditional costing, which is in this case the machine hours. So our total machine hours for both products is 43,000. So we'll divide 43,000 into total overhead cost and come up with our pool rate or our applied rate, which is basically $48 per direct labor hour. Now, applying that concept, what we will find if we use the traditional costing method, then regular will be allocated, because it is using only 4 labor hours, it will be multiplied by 48.59 and it will be allocated $194.36. And deluxe will be applied at a cost of $340.13. Okay, all right, we have calculated our numbers, but that's not what I want you to walk away with. I don't want you to walk away with just calculating the numbers. I want you to understand and interpret them for your company. What does it mean? What do we learn from these calculations?
When you have a lot of activities, you have to do activity-based costing because it won't, the traditional costing method won't pull all those in, at least not accurately, and you will end up overcosting or undercosting your products, and you won't make money or you'll not be competitive.
Very good, Gary. So what is actually, look at it this way. Activity-based costing says that you should be allocating $723 per unit to regular and $226.78 to deluxe. If we are using the traditional costing, because of the distortion, we are allocating $194 to regular and $340 to deluxe. So we are grossly underestimating the cost for producing the regular item, and we are grossly, if not as much, but we are distorting we are overcosting, or we are overestimating the cost of production of deluxe. And these distorted costs through traditional methods can actually lead us to make wrong business decisions. For example, we will accept a bid for regular product below what it costs us to produce, thinking that, oh, we are making a profit because we are still selling it above cost. If our cost is under costed, then it means what is happening is that we are selling below cost. That means it costs us more to produce than to sell, and every time we sell a regular unit, we are actually making a loss. And they will be surprised that, oh, at the end of the year, how come we made a loss when we sold so many products for profit? And the reason is that our costing was not correct. And on the other hand, because we wrongly believe, using the traditional method, that is, that our deluxe product costs more to produce, we will be willing to sell it only at a high price, which will actually make us uncompetitive, non-competitive in the marketplace, because other manufacturers who have done their costing better than us are able to sell it for less and still make a profit. Well, we think that we need to sell it at a much higher price to make a profit. So we are not willing to accept a lower bid. Okay. So I know that not all of you are going to be interested in costing later on, or in financials. You may have marketing and other things. But remember that even when you are a marketing major, or you want to take a career and pursue a career in marketing, you still need to be aware of the cost of your campaigns, cost of your product. So an understanding of the cost, what we are learning in this chapter, will be very, very useful. All right, this is all I have to say, and this is, actually I was not feeling well. I had my second shot, and I had some reaction. I mean, mild reaction, and I was kind of, had some fever and other things. But I wanted to hold this session today because I know that this is our last regular session before the exam, so I wanted to be here to answer any questions you had. I will be available to hold one more session before the exam. The exam, the regular window for exam is 16th April to 18th April, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Maybe on Thursday, I can hold a session if you need one. I mean, I'll just be available anyway. And I'll probably log in at 5 o'clock on Zoom. I'll let you know. I'll look at my calendar and see what time I will be available. So maybe Thursday or something, I can hold another session. Yeah, just to check on you guys and say hello to you before your exam on Friday. And on Thursday, I can log in at maybe 5 or 6. I will let you know what exact time. Will it be 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock? But tentatively, that's what we are hoping to do. Okay. Any questions?
Not here.
All right then, folks. It's always a pleasure to see you guys, and good luck with your exam. Don't become very tense or anything. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask me. Okay, and we can hold another Zoom session. You can just call me on the phone, and or I'll give you my cell phone number in case you need to contact me. So my number is 256-468-5148. If you need a quick question or something, always text me saying that you are a student in my 810 class so that I know who's going to call me, because as you know, we get a lot of marketing calls and we don't answer any unrecognized number. Please don't call me 2 o'clock in the morning. It's on mute, so my wife will not be happy. Right? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have
Goodbye.
a good week.